Share cloud. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the first GloBall Life webinar. I really appreciate you guys being here. My name is Abiola Wabara. I am the founder of GloBall Life. And on the call, we have my team as well. GloBall Life is a platform that was created to help athletes transition to life after sports. It came from my personal experience. After playing professionally for 10 years, I figured out that I did not know what to do after that. And after conversations and interviews with a lot of other athletes, seems to be a problem that we all have. So I figured, why not create a platform for us to be able to have the support that we need to figure out what to do with the next steps, to understand who we are outside of our sports. And there are a lot of pillars that we revolve around when thinking about what that transition looks like. And, amongst many things, we want to make sure that we empower our athletes to transition, and we want to create a platform and a community for our athletes. We do have core values that I think are really important with everything that we do. And I like the fact that they actually spell out impact. And there are integrity, motivation, purpose, authenticity, community, and trust. And on this first call, we wanted to talk about a topic that is important, which is financial education. And with today's age, we have NIL, a lot of athletes start making money and potentially don't really know what to do with their money at such a young age. So we wanted to partner with Mark and Mikey here on the call, that I'll pass it on to them here shortly to introduce themselves, to help us really talk about what we should do with that money to help us plan for the future, right? Because if I start making money at 18 or 20, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't know what to do the way I do today. So without talking too much here, I'll pass it on to Mikey to tell us more about Legacy Capital. And by the way, they are also athletes, so they've been through this experience themselves. So Mikey, after you.
Thank you, Abiola. And just a little bit about me and my partner, Mark Bloom on here. So my name is Mikey Ambrose. I'm a former professional soccer player, played for about 10 years in the MLS. And Mark also played about 10 years in the MLS. He retired a little bit earlier than I did, and he became my financial advisor. He managed my finances for about 6 years, and then when I retired, we partnered together, and now we lead the pro athlete branch of our firm. So at Legacy Capital Advisors, what we focus on in our branch is pro athletes or college athletes that are getting paid on NIL money. And basically, we are former athletes, so we know what athletes are going through, and we plan a little bit differently for them. We know athletes need two retirements. They need a retirement from sport and then a future retirement. And arguably, the more important one is the retirement from sport, because athletes go from making a tremendous amount of money with the same amount of bills pretty much. And then once they retire from sport, now the bills stay there, but now the income's gone. And that's a huge moment for athletes when they have to figure out, okay, do I go get a job right away? Do I that I might not like? Or if you planned correctly, now you can take a vacation year or two and figure out what you want to do, or you can start a business that you want to do, or it basically just the way we plan gives athletes more options when they retire from sport. And that's kind of where we focus on with athletes. And what we really try to do from an early age, whether that's players on NIL money or players signing their first pro contract, but that's to create those good habits to where you can start early and you can really reap those benefits as you continue to build your wealth and you continue to be successful in your sport. So that's a little not short, but that's a little description of us. And if Mark, you want to jump in there.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Mark Bloom. As Mikey said, I played professional soccer as well. One of those years I had the pleasure of being teammates with Mikey, so I have a lot of stories for him. But like you said, I retired earlier than Mikey in 2018, and fortunately, I had a good enough network and what I thought was a good plan at the time, but knowing what I know now, I wish I had planned a whole lot more. But I was able to find a career after sport in the financial advising, wealth management world. And because of our background, we have a major focus on athletes, whether it's collegiate or professional, because we've been there. Two, we want to help, and knowing what we know now, there's so many things that you can plan from day one, even before you sign a contract, that can set you, your family up for life and your career after sport. Um, and so, a big thing that it's not necessarily on the financial side, but what GloBall Life is doing in terms of creating a network, creating kind of an identity outside of sport is so big, because when sport is over, and it will be over at some point, you know, there's a transition period, and there's a big mental component to it as well that's very difficult. So that's not necessarily our focus, but if you have everything else in order, especially your finances, it gives you a runway to figure out what you want to do next and have a smoother transition from sport to what we call the real world. And so what Mikey called your first retirement, that's a massive life um, life event that happens. So, and if you haven't gone through it, or if you're going through it, if you've been through it, you know what we're talking about. So we definitely want to help athletes in order to advise them, even when they have nothing. There's something that you can do to build, because you can't get to where you're going without starting, right? You got to start somewhere. You can look at when you started the sport that you're in, you're probably terrible, right? You had to build that, right? You had to start somewhere. And so that's what we're here to help athletes do.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Mark. And last but not least, we have a couple of guests here because this is for athletes, but we also want to hear the perspective of athletes, right? We don't just want to talk to them and talk to you guys and make it a lecture, but we actually want to hear the lived experience of other athletes. So on the call today, we have Lance. Lance Terry is a pro basketball player in Europe. So Lance, if you'd like to introduce yourself real quickly.
Hey, how you doing? Lance. This is my first year playing professionally. Literally been here for like 2 months, so I'm just now getting into it. Just now getting into the investing stage of my life. So, just waiting to see how this turns out to be, and I'm excited for all that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And really appreciate you being here. I know it's late for you out there in Spain, so definitely thank you for making the time. And then we also have Gary Wiley. He played football at SMU, and he had an experience with NIL as an athlete. So thank you for being here, Gary. If you'd like to introduce yourself as well.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Gary. I played football at SMU for about 5 years. I played before the era of NIL, so players were getting paid, but that was illegal. And I also played in the era when it was legal. So I've had a little bit of experience with that, and I'm really thankful and grateful I had that opportunity, and I like seeing players get paid now.
Awesome, thank you. We'll definitely have lots of questions for you about that. And then last but not least, we also have Garland Green, who is not live with us because he actually has a game right now. He's in France, but he did pre-record a few answers to topics that we'll touch on. So you will see him come on screen in a virtual manner once we actually touch on those questions. But I think first things, so we can get started, right? We touched on NIL, and one of the big problems that we're seeing is 90% of athletes are making this money, but also spending as fast as it arrives. Or they have to start supporting friends and family before they even know what to do with that money. They have to deal with taxes, not necessarily knowing that tax will be taken out. And, you know, depending on how much you make, it could be long term or short term, but there's never a long term plan. It's always short term. So I'll start by passing to you, Mikey. Um, what is something that athletes should be thinking about once they get that money? Because the first thing you want to do is spend it, but it's not necessarily the best thing to do. So what should be the first thought process of, okay, now I have this $10,000 in my pocket. What do I do with it?
Right. And the first thought, obviously, in every athlete's mind when you get your first paycheck from whether you're pro or in college or whatever, it's just a testament to how hard you've worked. It's a moment to be grateful. It's a moment to celebrate what you've accomplished. And the first thought is definitely joy, obviously. After that, it's okay. Now some decisions need to be made. Okay, do I spend all this money? Do I do what all my friends and teammates have done with their first paycheck and blow through their money? Do I go buy a new Ferrari or whatever
So
whatever
my
the
initial, my initial,
Sorry about that.
sorry, or whatever the athlete mindset is at that time, which we've all been through that we know what that mindset is. But the first thing I would do, the first piece of advice would be to come up with a budget. And we talk about that all the time. We always say, we want you to enjoy the athlete life. We want you to enjoy it. We want you deserve it. You deserve to enjoy it. And you deserve to spend some of it, but you also should save some of it. And coming up with a budget just really puts a name to every dollar that comes into the account so that you can really not only set yourself up for the future, but you can also set your family up for the future. And we're going to talk through a lot of reasons and examples of why athletes spend all their money. But that's the first piece of advice I would give is to start with a budget to really start practicing good habits when you first get your first paycheck.
No, that's great. And so, Lance, let's start with you, right? This is your first year. You mentioned earlier that you're starting to invest. How did you even think about doing that? Because I know my first year, I was not investing, and that's a different problem. But if I could go back and learn from you, what would be the lesson here?
Definitely have some people looking out for me. Had some people mention Mikey to me. So then, at the time, this is when I'm just now getting married, and then my wife is pregnant also. So I'm thinking more of not even worrying about me. I'm just worried about my family at this point, and then trying to figure out how to provide and how to, save as much as I can just to, help out my family. So going there was definitely, that was my mindset. It was just, how do I save enough to, I guess, if anything does happen, just protect my family and just provide as much as I can for them.
No, that makes sense. And you mentioned Mikey. So, Mikey, how did you support Lance into these first steps? What were your guiding steps?
Yeah, so basically we met and basically what we say to all young athletes, it's do you want to live that athlete life and blow all your money and then have nothing at the end of your contract, or do you want to set yourself up and your family up for a very long time, basically was the gist of it. And Lance heard it loud and clear, and he signed his first basketball contract, and we're getting going already. So he's going in a very good direction, and I think there's a lot of athletes on this call, and a lot of athletes are saying, I wish I would have done something differently from a young age. And it's a testament to Lance because he is doing it at that young age when he signed his first contract. So I think a lot of athletes can learn from that example right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lance, what was your first thought once, Mikey broke it down for you? Did you feel like you had to sacrifice a lot by doing that, or are you still able to live the life that you want to live as a professional athlete, but also knowing that you will be able to do that for long term? Like, what was the reality check there?
Uh, you know, it is a big change really, especially with the budget that he brought up. Just putting a dollar to every or putting a name to every dollar that he said that comes in. So for us, that has actually been pretty helpful because we do tend to spend more than we make, as young people, we like to get things that we may or may not need. But this transition has actually been very good. Getting with Mikey and Mark, they've helped a lot. So, you know, I will say the biggest thing would just be knowing what you have to take care of, what's most important. Spend a lot of your time on that. As far as that's like paying off stuff, or if you have credit card debt, anything like how we have, focus on that, and creating a budget, just going from there. What exactly do you need? What do you not need? And then just you know, you're still able to live the life that you want to live. We're out here in Spain, still get to do stuff that we, never thought we would be able to do. We're traveling, so everything's still pretty good.
That's awesome. So
Let,
switching
let
to,
me let me
go
let
ahead.
me ask you some NIL questions, Lance. So just for those kids that haven't gone through it at all yet, maybe they're in their senior year or something, they're kind of worried about it. How were you first approached with NIL? Like, was it the AD came up to you and was like, "Hey, we're offering you this contract." Um, how did it make you feel that you're a college player about to get paid? And what kind of what just talk a little bit about that situation in that moment of what players are gonna experience or are experiencing.
For me, I came into it for, I want to say, like my last year of playing. Um, I will say, unless you're one of the top people on the team, top athletes that they want coming in, they may not necessarily tell you what you're getting. For me, I just got an email one day, this is your contract. Um, Pretty much just sign here, here, here. So that was kind of my experience with that. Um, just I will say with the NIL thing, just be careful. It can go like kind of sideways a lot of the time. Uh, I will say none of that stuff really is guaranteed. It says it is, but I wouldn't say that it's necessarily guaranteed. So that's also something you have to be careful with. But as long as you have, I guess, because now you can get agents, right, in college, like NIL agents. So I
Mm-hmm.
would say having somebody that you trust, that can break that stuff down for you when you get an NIL contract, and being able to talk with you, your family, your coaches to get a ground like statement of all those things will help a lot.
Yeah, that's great. And to follow up to that, you mentioned some of the top players make a decent amount compared to some of the bottom. And is there like a kind of, because in the pro world you see kind of a divide in a locker room. Is there a divide really based on, okay, this guy's making a lot, this guy's not making? Is there, or is it that old school college family type feel still, even though money's thrown in?
It can definitely be divided. Uh, Especially depending, what school you go to. A bigger school has more money, obviously. A lot of top athletes go to the bigger schools. So I was at Georgia Tech, ACC still, so it's still a top school. Um, I think we had, I won't say his name, one of our guys was making 500,000. Um, so there's definitely a different attitude when you're making that much, as far as somebody who's not making that much coming into practice. It can be a divider really, but uh, money's not everything really.
Right, right, that makes sense. And what was the what was like the mentality in the locker room? Were those guys just kind of blowing through their money? Were they, because we have other clients that have a lot of bad stories from friends of they just spend all their money in college. They just blow it all, and I'm
Yeah.
like in college, I don't know how you could spend that much money. I mean, we've talked about it. Like you're going to class, you're in a dorm room or whatever, and how do you even spend that amount of money? So do you have experience with those guys, and how is that even possible? You know?
Yeah,
And before you answer this, Gary, feel free to chime in as well, because I know you have the same similar experience. So we'd love for you to jump into this conversation as well.
Oh yeah,
Go
of
ahead.
course. Well, kind of to piggyback off what Lance was saying, there does create divide in a locker room and things like that. One of the biggest issues I ran into, because I got into college in 18 and out in 2023. The biggest thing was guys not wanting to practice because their contract wasn't being fulfilled, obligations and things like that. And it's a little bit different now as you can be paid directly from the school. But before that, when it first aired back, hey, NIL's back, we could pay players. You weren't getting paid from the school. Your money was not coming off from the school, it was coming from a collective group. So you punishing your teammates in the school because someone else is not paying you. So that was a lot of things I experienced as well. And seeing some guys not getting paid anything, have better stats, work harder, and then seeing a guy who isn't performing at that well getting paid that much money, it'll make you feel a certain type of way.
yeah, it definitely does. Going back on experiences that I saw with teammates, a lot of, Tech is in the middle of Atlanta, so there's a whole bunch of restaurants around and everything. So, not gonna lie, any day I looked on Instagram, one of my teammates was out at some restaurant spending some type of money. Roof Chris, STK, like pretty much every single day of the week. There would be sometimes we'll get paid on like the end of the month, and then I want to say like a day or two later, they're like, "Oh, man, I'm already done with my check," and I'm like, dude, we just got the check like 2 days ago. But it's definitely kind of crazy with how a lot of people spend money.
Yeah, that's insane. I wish I had money to spend in college. I think there was a question coming from Crystal.
Yeah, hi. I had a question. Lance, excuse me, touched on something earlier, and I think it's something that we need to really talk about a little bit more. He said, when you start to get your money, find somebody that you trust, to help you with that. I know there's a lot of athletes who found somebody that they trusted who still ended up broke. A lot of times, athletes, some of them feel like they know their uncle or their auntie who was a teacher or who was this or who handled business very well. So they will appoint that person because it's a close family member and they feel like they can trust them, um, and still end up broke. Not necessarily because the person was dishonest, but they just weren't as knowledgeable about the thing. So, Mikey, can you talk about some of the things that athletes need to look for when they're trying to find out who is that person that they should appoint as their the person over their finances or whatever? Is trust the only factor that they should be considering, and what are some other factors that they should be thinking about as well?
Right, and this is a massive issue with professional athletes, and I'm sure it's with NIL athletes now as well. But a lot of friends, a lot of cousins, a lot of aunties, uncles have great business plans. You know, invest this money with me, and I'm gonna quadruple your money in the next few months. Like that happens all the time, and is one of the main reasons, probably top two reasons why pro athletes go broke is because of those situations. And I know it's extremely difficult to say no to family members or friends, and and all this, but we deal with this on a daily basis with our athletes. And one thing that I always recommend is finding somebody to be the middleman. So if someone comes to you with an idea, you don't have to say no to them. You say, hey, speak to my money guy, speak to this person, so that they can be the guy who vets the investment, vets the business idea, and can give them an answer. Because maybe it is a good idea, but at least you're not the one vetting it, and you're not the one saying no to a family member or friend. And how to find that person to be that middleman for you, I would say, finding a financial advisor, finding a older former athlete that has been through it, that is willing to be your mentor or something, could be an option too. Basically finding somebody that has experience in the athlete world and the business world, that cares about you, that can be your middleman in those situations, I would say.
Thank you for that. And we have a question from Kelsey.
Hello, sorry I joined late, but I'm Kelsey Roberts. I'm a recent graduate from TSU, and I'm very interested in NIL and athlete representation. So my question is kind of similar to the previous question, and it's, as NIL continues to evolve, what key skills or experiences would you recommend aspiring agents or athlete advocates to focus on developing now to best support their athlete in managing their brands and long-term opportunities?
Right. I didn't catch. Did you catch that whole question, Mark? I'm sorry. I only caught the
No,
first part.
Kelsey, can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry. I think it may be my building. But I was saying, as NIL continues to evolve, what's some key skills or experiences that you would recommend to someone aspiring to be an agent or an athlete advocate?
Aspiring to be an agent or an athlete advocate. I would, a big thing would be just understanding the culture and the environment that these athletes are in, the amount of pressure that they have and outside noise that's happening. So kind of like an agent is very much like a financial advisor, where there's a trust element to it, because your agent is extremely important in directing you where to go. And you have to be, to Crystal's question too, you have to be aware that there are ulterior motives at play when it's somebody else dealing with an athlete. And that's why trust is so important. And so, Crystal, to answer your question as well, to the athlete, doing your own research. It's good to hear from other people. Everyone's trying to direct you every which way, but you got to do your own research. Read your own books, talk to people who have done it, experienced it. And Kelsey, to your question, talking to agents and agencies, internships, stuff like that. You need experience in how experienced advisors or agents have done it and dealt with it, and what were their growing pains, kind of asking the same questions. What'd you do right? What'd you do wrong? What do you wish you knew earlier?
Yeah, and I will add to that, right? Talking to the athlete themselves that had the experience with the agent. I know, like, throughout my career, I went through 3 agents before I found one that I felt comfortable with, right? So really trying to understand what went wrong, or what would you want to see from an agent that you haven't seen before, so that you can actually go and solve the problems that are not being spoken about, right? Because every agent thinks they can solve every problem, but if you don't know what the problem of the person is, you're not solving anything, because you're just guessing. So I think, to Mark's point, having those conversations and some sort of like interview process where you try to understand what the main pain points are and see if you have in your tool bag what is needed to solve those issues. I think that will put you in a different league as most agents that are all doing the same things.
I'll add one more thing to that. my agent was basically like my older brother. I felt I was super close to him. I still am super close to him. But the trust factor is massive, as we've been talking about. But an advice to get that trust established is, I would say, honesty. I think honesty is huge. If you have an agent coming to you saying, if you sign with me, I'm going to get you an extreme amount of money, and I'm going to get you to this team, that team, whatever, and it's not realistic, then that's not a good sign. If they're being realistic and they're like, look, to be honest, you're not at the place to get this massive contract, but we can work at this and this and this to get you there. If they have that honesty with you, I think that's a huge determining factor to if you can trust them or not.
No, that's great. And I think a quick shout out to Garland. I wanted to show what he had to say in regards to gaining trust with someone to help you manage your money versus, the auntie, the uncle, and the family members, so that we can hear his perspective as well, because I think he made some good points. So let me share it here.
So my initial experience with family and friends was, just kind of, managing the expectations. Sometimes you have family or friends that expect sometimes a handout, or expect even sometimes like a business partnership. But for me, my younger self, sometimes you got to learn to say no, and also learn to seek out advice. Speak to someone, speak to a financial advisor, speak to someone who has expertise in dealing with close family and friends. So that would be kind of one of my main things, especially speaking to my younger self.
So yeah, I think he was spot on with what we were just talking about here. So I just wanted to make sure that his word was heard as well, even though it's not here with us live. Mikey, back to you. Oh, go ahead, Crystal.
I just had another question kind of along the same lines to drive it home. And I guess this would be Mikey and Mark. I think for me, one of the goals is to actually empower the athlete. So what would you say to an athlete who has a financial advisor or an agent, and they're feeling like things may not be right, but a lot of times they don't have the confidence or feel like they have the knowledge base to really go back and forth with a financial advisor, because they feel like, okay, well, we've deemed this person the expert, right? This is what that he or she does, so I'm going to defer everything. And a lot of times the athlete is the last person to find out that they're broke, and all their investments are gone. So what would you guys say to the athlete, young or old, about, telltale signs to know in advance that things are going downhill with your investments or finances, or what to look for from the person when things are going downhill, to empower them a little bit more, and let them know how to see the numbers, see the progress going forward?
I think that's a great question. And one thing I would say is, and what I say to our clients is, this is your money, you're the boss. So you're the CEO of your own brand, your own company as the athlete. So you need to know what's going on with everything. So you need to be in the meetings. You need to ask good questions, and look for those honest answers like Mikey was telling us about. And just continue to educate yourself. Like, there are no dumb questions. Ask the question and follow up with another question until you understand. That's when you really can determine whether or not this sounds right or this is too good to be true. Mikey, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'll just add something that me and Mark like to do, because we were athletes, and we know that how important this is we like to educate our clients as they're going through the investment process. So going back to what Mark said, do your own research. For example, if your advisor is telling you that he's made you 20% this year, just look up what the S&P 500 did this year, and if it's close to that, then he's probably telling the truth. But if the S&P is down 10% and he's saying he did 20%, probably something's not adding up right there. And also, what we do is we educate you on what exactly you're invested in, how exactly that investment has performed. And we like to review with clients. And an issue we have is a lot of athletes don't want to know about it. They don't want to learn about it. They're like, no, I just want you to handle it and we'll stay out of it. And you just, I trust you, whatever. A lot of athletes do that. And it makes it a lot easier for an advisor, but at the same time, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I would advise you to meet with your advisor as often as you want, but at least 2 or 3 times a year, so that they can give you an update on how it's doing. Do a little bit of your own research to be able to know if they're somewhat accurate or not based on your own research, and ask them to educate you a little bit. I would say.
One more thing, and I'll get out of the way. You guys both referenced research and reading. Are there any books or reading materials or websites or blogs that you would suggest people follow or check out to start getting savvy on these things?
That's a great question. Anything Warren Buffett has written would be pretty good. Honestly, as social media is a pretty good place to find some, not advice, but ideas maybe on where to go and where to start, and who has similar values that you have. For me, I think it started just like the Apple's stock app. Just start looking at that daily and start adding stocks that you want to follow, that you hear about on the news and everything. And just by being in front of it on a daily basis, maybe not daily, but on a consistent basis, you're going to start to understand a little bit more of what's going on, what's out there in terms of investments. And there's a lot more than just the stock market. There's real estate, there's private equity, there's all these things. So it's hard to recommend one thing, but just start, kind of like anything, start somewhere.
Yeah, and I would just add, just like I said, a little Google search of the S&P 500 will give you a good indicator of where the market's at and where it's been in the last 10 years. But anything, like Mark said, anything related to Warren Buffett is good. Ramsey is good. Dave Ramsey. Any books that he's written or information he's published. Also, reach out to me and Mark. We're happy to answer any questions you have, teach you. We love teaching athletes. We love giving financial literacy lessons on things. We love talking about budgeting and all that. We're happy to do free calls and free consultations with athletes to discuss any questions they have.
No, that's great.
Abby, I have a question. We heard from Lance, and we've heard ad hoc stories about coaches having their athletes come to them saying, "Hey, I used up all my NIL money. Can I borrow some money?" We've heard those. I'll call them horror stories. And I'm sure if I'm a parent, I have the horror story. How should one think about, as an NIL recipient, about tax responsibilities? Where is that in Legacy Capital's conversation with an NIL recipient? How is that part of the budgeting conversation that goes on? And my fear as as a parent of a couple of athletes is that they would have money and then they would not even know that they're going to pay 30% tax on that money, and they would blow through the money without a budget. There's all sorts of fears that these bring up. So how do we help advise students to say, This isn't just oh, really would be nice to have a budget so that we have some income in our future life, but this is almost a requirement.
David, that's a great question. Probably one of the biggest problems that you see, especially in the NIL world. So part of what we do, speaking on foundational finance, which would be, talking about taxes, budgeting, savings, insurance, kind of the foundational layer of any good financial plan when you have that in place. And we also own a tax firm, so Legacy Tax and Accounting. And so obviously in partnership with a CPA, it doesn't have to be our CPA, but with a CPA, that's one of the, I guess, financial partners that you need on your team as you build, because the NIL money is not, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lance or Gary, but it's not being taxed. And even a gift, if somebody gives you a car, that is going to count as income. The value of that car is going to count as income. And guess what? You got to pay taxes on that. So the number one destroyer of wealth there is going to be taxes, because you get a check for $50,000, and so you go buy a car for $50,000, and it's just because you can buy it doesn't mean you can afford it. So there's definitely education on, developing a tax plan and a tax budget, because if you're not paying taxes, well, we need to get you in front of a CPA to build or pay quarterly taxes, however it makes sense for you, so that when you go to file your taxes, the beginning of the following year, you're not going to be surprised and then basically be waiting for that next paycheck just to pay the tax bill, right? So that's gone before it even comes in.
No, that makes sense. And I wanted to ask a questions to both Gary and Lance, starting with Gary. Knowing that, you play college and now I'm assuming you're done, right, with your college career. How is that transition has worked out for you, as far as now you start making money in a different avenue, but how did you translate, the lesson that you learned as an NIL athlete into now having a regular income, and how to keep the same mindset as an athlete and making sure that you're still, building for your future? And if Gary, if you want to start with that one.
Great. Okay. So I was very fortunate. We had a life after ball program, kind of attached to our NAL program. So when I was getting this money and things like that, we had a couple of gentlemen that came in and talked to us about it. So I was in a position to where I saved some money up, and I had an emergency fund as well, if I needed to use it. A big testament to what I'd say I brought as an athlete from college to where I am now in the professional world is hard work works. How you do anything is how you do everything. And I figured, however, whatever job I take, anything like that, if I work hard at it, put my mind to it, have a certain set of goals, whether they be small or big, that is something that has kind of helped me and guided me along the way. Part of my transition period, when I first got done playing college ball, I was training and coaching kids. It was pretty lucrative in the area I am, Dallas, Highland Park area. So that was my job for about the year. And I wanted to do it forever. I mean, I loved it. But I got an opportunity to make a little bit more money. And it made sense for me. But being able to take that job, it did help me transition a lot. And with those classes that they offered along with our NIL meetings we had bi-monthly, excuse me, that kind of helped me out a lot.
No, that's great. And that's amazing that you had that program. And that's pretty much what we're trying to do with GloBall Life, right? Complement university that do have it, or help university that do not have it to actually build something that can help their athletes just like they helped you. And for you, Lance, a little bit different, but similar question, right? Like the transition from college athlete to pro, knowing that you made a little NIL money, was that something that you were able to carry on to your pro life, knowing that we know that you're the smart one, started early with Mikey and team, But how does that, like, when you were in college, was that mindset there already, or is that something that you learned once you went pro and started working with these guys?
I would say it happened a little bit after, I guess right before I went pro, really. I would say I had the initial thought to save when I got my NIL money. Obviously, that did not go too well. A couple things happened, and then, like we said before, taxes hit, and then taxes takes everything. So, uh, my initial plan was to save, but I would say I needed a financial advisor like Mikey and Mark just to help me with it because me doing it by myself was not, smart on my part and not working for me. Needed somebody who had more knowledge with that. So that would be like probably the biggest transition was just, if you can't rely on yourself, try to rely on somebody, like we said, that you trust and just go from there.
No, that's great. And are there any questions in the audience, by the way? You can put them in the chat, or you can come off mute if you have any questions for Lance, for Gary, Mikey, Mark, anyone here. Happy to answer those. And if you don't, no worries. This will be sent out. You can send them out later. Some people are shy, don't like to come off mute, and that's okay. Mikey or Mark, another question, like I guess the final question, as we get close to closing out here, is we touched about it on it a little bit earlier, but is there a minimum to be able to work with you guys? Like, NIL, like Gary mentioned earlier, and Lance as well, if you're not the top player, you might make not as much as everyone else. So if I'm an athlete that only makes a couple of thousands, do I even bother calling you, or I'm on my own until I make more?
Right. And I'll start this, Mark. You could jump in. But so me and Mark have made a personal decision to have zero minimum. So the reason why we have a zero minimum entry point, when most advisors have a 250K, 500K minimum just to work with them. We chose to not do that because we are former athletes. We know that athletes, when they're getting started, they don't have 250 grand. Even if you're making pretty good money, you probably don't have that to start at the beginning because you're probably spending a good chunk in the beginning. And we want to help athletes. We want to help them to create good habits from the beginning because we've seen too many of our friends and teammates that go broke after a very good career. And we don't want to see that happen to athletes. We want to change. We want to implement as much change as we can in athletes' lives and their actions and their futures. And we want them to help change their families' lives. So we don't have a minimum. We start as little as you need to. And we want to create those good habits for you that can change your life.
No,
Yeah, and of course, being former athletes, we want to help athletes, and we want to, we don't want that high minimum that a lot of advisors have, because the reason they have that is because you're not making a lot of money until the account size gets pretty big. But that's not what we're about. We're about building that foundation because one, we believe in these athletes, whether it's during their career or post-career, that they're going to go on and do incredible things, whatever it is, because as Gary said, you are learning these skills that are unmatched in common society. So being able to work with you young, and the key word is starting young. If you look at any compounding interest calculator in terms of, if I say $50, $100 every pay period from 19 years old to 65, you'll be amazed at how much money you can potentially save. It's life-changing type money. But we want to get you in the door. We want to build your financial foundation and literacy. And then we build a plan, and as it continues to grow, it can evolve from there. But yeah, we definitely don't want to set a high bar, because we don't, a lot of people say, well, I'll start investing when I sign my next contract. And it's like, if you haven't built up a good habits from the beginning, you're not going to start when you have more money. You're just going to end up spending more, because I think we all know it's pretty easy to figure out a way to spend all that money.
Very true.
I'll add to that. A lot of athletes think I don't make a lot, so I can't. There's no point in me investing right now. Just to touch on what Mark said, the important factor is the age that you start at. If you start at a younger age, you don't have to put that much money away for you to set yourself up for the future. And that, as Mark said, it could be as little as $50 a month starting at a young age, can compound over time and really build up to something nice. But the idea is hopefully you do make more money, so then you can save more money, and then you can really be in a good position when you want to retire. And hopefully, if you do it correctly, like we do it for a lot of our athletes, when you're done with your sport, hopefully you can never have to work again. That's the eventual goal of most athletes is I want to work, and then once I'm done with your sport, you want to be able to not do anything else, but you might want to do something else for fun or whatever. That's the goal. And if you make that real money, if you make, whether it's a small amount or a large amount, you can build yourself and set yourself up for a good future. And if you're doing well, you can, if you really save correctly, that dream or that goal could be fulfilled if you do it correctly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Abiella, I have one other question.
Over it.
I just want somebody to touch on this fact because we're talking about NIL. I think Gary mentioned earlier about a time when he was playing where money was being given, but it was illegal. I want to touch on the fact that even though we have NIL right now, there are still ways in which certain deals, certain monies are not good monies and can have a negative impact on the athlete and their eligibility. So if somebody could speak on some of the types of deals that could have an impact on the athlete's eligibility and basically things they should steer away from. Even though we have NIL now, I think that would be really valuable because I think a lot of kids would just think, oh, they approached me, NIL is here, so why would this be something that I shouldn't accept, a deal that I shouldn't take or agree to? Does anybody have any knowledge about that?
Let me comment quickly. I mean, we reached out to compliance officers at universities to invite them to this event. Many of them really play that role to make sure that athletes understand what's compliant, what's kosher, what's not. And I think that's, while that's not, there is some financial education there. I think that's really where it's important that an athlete respect the compliance constraints of a university and go there first. That would be my thinking. I don't know about Mark or Mikey, what you think?
Yeah, Dave, that's what I would say. I know every state is going to have their own laws and probably maybe even on the university level. So check with your compliance officer, your coach, your AD, somebody that you trust to get the approval before taking any dollar.
And throw in agent too. If you hire an agent, every money thing should go through your agent. They know the rules. They know what's allowed or not allowed. That's your agent's responsibility to figure that out for you.
Yeah.
Assuming you vetted your agent.
Right. Right.
And, I know we are 1 minute away from the end of this webinar, so I definitely want to thank everyone for your time, your knowledge, your questions, and taking the time to be on the call with us today. Just wanted to share a couple of upcoming events. In November, we'll have another event with one of our service providers from the platform to talk about getting unstuck. So the transition period where you're trying to figure out who you are without your sport. we'll go through that, and we have more details for that coming soon. And then in December, we're planning for our first in-person event. Think of it as a networking slash job fair type of event where we'll hope that you will come, get your resume checked, get some questions answered, talk to potential employees. Next up, we have a quick QR code. Lance, this is for you because you said it earlier. So this is the QR code to our website. You can sign up to the portal, create your account, and I'll put the link in the chat as well because it's easier to use on your computer. And I'll send it out in the email when I send this to everyone. But any athlete that is looking to explore what to do in transition stage, this is a great platform for you. It's free. You don't have to be at the end of your career. It's something you can do while you're still in the midst of your career because it gives you time to explore, similar to investing. Instead of money, in this case, you're investing in yourself. You're compounding your future. You like how I did that? I think it was pretty good. And last but not least, we would like to get your feedback. So if you can quickly go to menti.com and put these 4 numbers, there will be 2 questions for you to answer. And you can either use the QR code if you want to do it with your phone or just go to menti.com and then 8725-4570. And I need to queue up the questions. You should be able to see the questions now. The first one is, what topic from today would you like more information about? I'll give you a couple of minutes for everyone to answer. NIL and the portal. Look, I guess I could bring this. You can see it as it comes up. Vetting your circle of influence and your advisors. That's a good one. Give it 30 more seconds. Okay, and I'll move on to the second question. After college and how to invest, save, event without NIL. That's a great question. So we'll make sure that for our upcoming events, we'll include these topics. What typical returns from legacy clients? In the email, I will make sure to include the LinkedIn and emails to both Mikey and Mark so you can connect with them directly as well. So these are questions that I can answer for you. And last questions. Oh, I lied, there's 2 more questions. What topics would you like to see covered by GloBall Life in the future? So we talked about getting unstuck. What other topics from GloBall Life? So not specific to finance in this case, but us in general, that pertain to your transition and things that you might need support with as an athlete. What topics would you like to see covered? Just for major support beyond the ball. How to just add the skill into your resume. Love that one, and this is the next topic. So
I feel like the answer to both of those questions is to go to our site and explore to see some of the things we offer there too.
That too, but just in case we don't have it, we can take ideas from them.
These are great, by the way.
Yeah. Okay, now really the last question. Was today's conversation helpful? Well, that was easy. Awesome. All right, so the call was recorded, so we'll be sharing the link to the recording is uploaded. And like I mentioned, I will send out an email to everyone that was here. I saw a few people had to drop, but everyone that was here, again, thank you so much. This was our first event, and hopefully the first of many. And we're looking forward to seeing more and more of you guys on these calls. So thank you again for your time, everyone. Mark and Mikey, thank you so much for your knowledge and your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank y'all. Have a good evening.